Community Highlights. Another local exclusive from Southeastern Michigan's news and information station, MonroeCountyRadio.com.
This is our town, the place we call home.
Welcome to This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevrolet. Here's Jeff Yorkey.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Is Our Town. I'm Jeff Yorkey. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And in our town today, we got Paul Lemarre III.
That's correct.
From the Monroe Port. He's the director of the Port Authority down there. And hey, Paul, it is really a pleasure to have you on the show. I think this is going to be a fun one.
I totally agree. Anytime we can talk about the progress that we've been making at the port and how it affects the citizens of Monroe County, that's the best part of what we get to do.
Well, you know, the port, the interesting thing about the port is that it kind of was a stagnant...
My wife says it was a pile of dirt.
Yeah, right.
For
No,
a
seriously,
while.
until 2012.
And I started in 2012
Yeah.
after overseeing maritime operations in the Port of Toledo.
Yes.
And really, it was almost a blank canvas. I tell people that when we started, it was almost like somebody gave you a big port train set, and they said, now here are the businesses you have. Here are the railroads, the dock space. Here are your list of challenges. Now make it all work as a single transportation unit. And since then, we've had the most exponential growth of any port on the entire Great Lakes in about a 10-year period here.
Yeah, and really the only limitation that you have, because I got a feeling the port would be even bigger if it wasn't for the limitation of the depth of the.
I say we're draft challenged.
Right, you're draft challenged, right?
The full seaway draft through the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway System is 26 foot 6 inches. We are at 21 feet. Now that's from a low water datum or low water average. So whatever the water gauge is running at any given time, we have on top of that. So typically on average, it's been about plus 36 inches, giving us an additional 3 feet. So at our riverfront dock, we're at 24 feet. And just a couple of seasons ago, we were bringing in vessels at full seaway draft.
Really. So okay, so now we have to go back to the beginning here with you, Paul, because you know, like I said, like everybody around here, everybody knows. Nobody knew anything about the Port of Monroe. I think most people didn't even know there was a Port of Monroe.
I still at the grocery store occasionally get the they see my Port of Monroe shirt and
like
Port of Monroe. What's that?
Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is you came in here. Now I'll be honest, we needed somebody like you, and it started when you were young. You have been involved in the maritime business your entire life.
It's more than a job. I'm third generation in the Great Lakes maritime industry. My father has been the key part of a tugboat company in Detroit for 45 years, is also a famous marine artist, and most kids spent
your dad is the did he go to UW with Madison?
He actually went to the University of Detroit and studied under Father Edward Dowling, who is another famous Great Lakes marine artist.
Yes.
And it's more than a job, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Literally, from the first trip I took on a Great Lakes freighter when I was 6 months old to spending every summer since then on Great Lakes freighters and tugboats, it is a passion. It is what not only put food on our family's table, but is also the transportation network and the heart of a system that feeds industrial America.
Yeah. So did you grow up just listening to Gordon Lightfoot all the time?
I like Gordon Lightfoot. You can't go wrong. Undoubtedly, his Fitzgerald song brought attention to Great Lakes shipping that really nothing else ever has.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't go wrong with Gord's Golds, buddy.
That's right. Hey, so I got to ask you. So you've been involved since you were born. Obviously, your family's been involved. When was the first time that you had an actual job in the maritime industry? How old were you? Besides the Navy?
The first time I ever handled a tugboat with a tow line was when I was about 5 years old. The picture is on my fridge at home. And the first jobs that I had working aboard tugboats with our family's tugboat company was growing up all through high school.
Oh, so you were just, it was one of them deals, family affair, and
it is.
You were worked right in the business. So
yep, one of my father's mentors and the owner of Gaelic Tugboat Company was a guy named Captain William Hoy, and he was family. He was like my adopted grandfather, and I had the privilege of being part of a very active towing operation on the Detroit River, and really having all that the Great Lakes industry embodied ingrained within my aspirations going forward in life.
So now at some point this leads you to the Navy.
Yeah, that's an interesting path as well.
That is an interesting
I went to
path.
a maritime academy for college. I went to the California Maritime Academy, majored in marine transportation with minors in logistics and naval science. And while I was at the Maritime Academy in California, I was still doing my commercial sea time on the Great Lakes in order to get my pilotage. However, I realized the opportunity through the Merchant Marine Reserve Program that you could be commissioned into our armed forces, and ultimately that there were aviation billets given specifically for the maritime academies. The long story short is that, and of course it's a popular topic with Top Gun these days,
right?
Is that
go ahead, tell everybody, man.
I was going to say, when Top Gun came out when I was a kid, I was also very involved in hydroplane racing, and it's the need for speed, buddy. And so when the opportunity presented itself that I could go to flight school and become a naval aviator, it became a passion just like the boats were for a very long time. And so I call it my it's my service detour, and I really think ultimately it's something that you realize it at the time, but it's not till later in life that you realize just how exceptional of an opportunity you had to be flying in the world's most capable aircraft.
Yeah, tell everybody what you flew.
So I did the majority of my flying in the F-18 Hornet and Super Hornet, just like Top Gun 2 that you see today.
I can hear Michelle in the background. She's going, wow. She didn't know this.
What's so cool is that my brother-in-law is currently a Super Hornet pilot.
Oh, no kidding.
And so my little sister and my brother-in-law are getting to take the same path through life that I did after I was commissioned. And I recently got to go to his winging, where prior naval aviators were recognized along with the pilots who are getting their wings of gold. And to see him put on those gold wings, and to see my little sister put her spouse's wings around her neck with her necklace,
pretty cool.
It's one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. When you served earlier in life and ultimately have had a positive influence on someone, they feel that call to service, and then them realizing those dreams is even better than you doing it yourself.
Yeah, right. Any combat missions or anything like that?
No combat missions.
No.
A lot of people don't know that I was in for just about 4 years. I actually was diagnosed with cancer at a very early age in life. So fought cancer. 27 years old, was the youngest guy ever diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Oh, no way.
And it made medical journals. That's not
really
necessarily something you want to be known for.
No.
But I'll tell you what. As with everything, everything for a reason, and it really changed my perspective on life at an early age. Ultimately, when I got out of the Navy, it brought me back to Great Lakes shipping. I was sailing as an officer on the family tugboats out of Detroit, and then ended up, and it's a very it's kind of a long story, but ultimately ended up as the director of the Willis B. Boyer Museum Ship in 2006 in Toledo. And to abbreviate that challenge, after 1 year of kind of putting that museum ship back on track, which, to give you an idea of the meaning of that to me, is that the Willis B. Boyer was originally called the Colonel James M. Schoonmaker, and since the time I was born, there was a model of the Colonel James M. Schoonmaker with her builder's plate on our fireplace mantel. When she became a museum in Toledo in 1986, my dad would take me to the museum and said it was like going to church to pay your respects to the history of your family and that of Great Lakes Shipping. And when I took over as the director, she was facing significant challenges, and ultimately, I was told after 1 year that the boat was going to be scrapped, and I no longer had a job. And in a last-ditch effort, I appealed to the Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority, and a man named Jim Hartung, who was their president at the time, Jim took me and the ship under his wing, and ultimately they gave me the opportunity to try to save her, which resulted in a bigger plan when I was given responsibility for what was the Toledo Maritime Center, which was a ferry terminal built in Toledo, and it ultimately ended up being a $15.5 million development, now called the National Museum of the Great Lakes.
Yes, and one of the best on the Great Lakes.
I call it the Smithsonian of Great Lakes maritime history.
Yeah, I've been to a bunch of them, and I'm going to tell you, Paul, it is the best. It's the best one I've ever been to. It's incredible. It's so pervasive. I mean, everything that you want to know, and there are artifacts from a zillion ships out there.
We actually have more
it's
Edmund Fitzgerald artifacts than any other. I'm also on
including
the board
I'm
on the board of Whitefish Point. And
are you
Great
really?
Lakes Shipwreck Historical
No kidding.
Society.
Which is another cool place, by the way.
They are awesome.
Yeah.
To go see the Fitz's Bell is a very powerful thing, and we modeled some of our facility in Toledo after that.
I could kind of, I could tell because I've been to both of them, and I could tell.
It kind of
feel that.
When we were designing the National Museum of the Great Lakes, we went in a 2-day period. We flew around the entire Great Lakes, visiting all of the museums, and kind of took away what we thought were the best of each. And what we have today is 15,000 square feet of space that had been underutilized as a ferry terminal, serving as some of the finest exhibit space with interactive exhibits for younger folks in all the traditional artifacts and history. Everything within the building is centered around the Great Lakes being a powerful force of industry, of people, of environment. And that really sets the stage for being able to go aboard the Colonel James M. Schoonmaker, which was once
you got to go aboard that thing because it is the coolest. Seriously, man. I mean, that is to think. Now, when was it in service? Schoonmaker.
She was launched July 1st, 1911, and then
I can tell I'm talking to a maritime guy here.
And July 1st of 2011 is when we rechristened her to be the Schoonmaker with James M. Schoonmaker II and his wife Tracy, and the bottle of champagne broke. Now, James M. Schoonmaker II was the son of Gretchen Schoonmaker that christened the ship in 1911. In 2011, Gretchen Schoonmaker's son and wife broke the bottle of champagne across the bow of the same ship 100 years to the moment
that is
of
awesome.
when his mother had. And that has never been done in maritime history throughout the world.
Yeah.
And even cooler is that at the museum, now we have the Tug Ohio, which was built in 1903.
Yep.
And when we dedicated the museum Tug Ohio, we also christened the brand new Tug Ohio of the Great Lakes Towing Company. And my wife was, my beautiful wife Julie, was the one who got to christen the Tug Ohio. And
see, now that had to be cool for you personally.
It was
right?
the proudest moment
right?
of my professional career.
Yeah.
Again, when you see the ones you love involved in a way you never expected in what you are so passionate about, she broke the heck out of that bottle, and it was really a culmination of all of our efforts at the museum, because you had past, present, and future. You had this restored James M. Schoonmaker with the historic Tug Ohio being dedicated as a museum tug, the new Tug Ohio being christened, and the entire Great Lakes maritime industry in attendance, reflecting on what got us there. So it's a big part of what I still do today. I still oversee the vessels for the museum. I've been the vice chairman of the board of the museum nearly since its opening, and will never walk away from the vessels or the historic obligation that is a big part of my life.
I think that's cool, and you know the reason that I set the show up today the way I did, because I knew that we'd be talking about this, because I think that is so cool. And I love the history stuff, and the history of the Great Lakes is some of the coolest history that people around here need to know more about. And if you want to know, go to the Schoonmaker, because you will learn a ton, and it is an absolute cool place. And that, I think, the perspective that you give to everything that goes on in the Great Lakes and everything else, I think is probably, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing this has a lot to do with your ability to transform the Port of Monroe into what it is today. And unfortunately, I got to take a little break. But if you can bear with me, I'd like to talk about exactly that and all the things that you've done with the port since you took over in 2012. Right after this, sound good?
That's perfect.
All right, we'll be back right after this message from Allen Chevrolet Cadillac.
When you're looking for a new or used vehicle, you want the best selection to choose from. Allen of Monroe is the largest volume Monroe County dealer with 300 new and used vehicles on their lot. That's way more than the other dealers. Allen Chevrolet of Monroe has been voted the best Monroe County dealer of the year for the past 3 years. When you want the best selection at a great price, there's only one dealer in Monroe County that delivers. Allen of Monroe.
All right, welcome back. And if you're just joining us, I'm here with Paul Lemarre III, and Paul is the director of the Port Authority of Monroe. And Paul's been talking. If you just joined us, he's been talking about his path to that incredible job and all the things that he's doing, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. He worked in the tugboat industry with his dad and his family for years and years and years. Joins the Navy, becomes, of all things, a pilot. Then is diagnosed with cancer at 27, prostate cancer of all things, at 27 years old, and then you go back to the thing that where you came from. You go back to where it all started. Now, you know, the thing though that interests me is your historical perspective on things. You know what I mean? You have a historical perspective on things that I wouldn't expect someone as young as you to have yet. Do you think, did your experience with cancer have anything to do that facing mortality, hey, you know what?
I think that's one thing, but I also think that when I grew up, I was in an environment where I was around my dad, the fellow historians that were parts of the Marine Historical Society of Detroit, the various museums, and the enthusiasts who, and historians then, really instilled this within me at a young age. And I spent more time with my dad and his historian friends or on the vessels than I did with a lot of kids. And so
and that had to be pretty important to your dad. Your dad's an artist, famous artist, by the way.
That's correct.
And of maritime history.
He is unbeknownst to the world right now, he is actually being inducted into the Great Lakes Hall of Fame in September, which is something that I absolutely could not be prouder. And the Great Lakes Maritime Hall of Fame is up in Sault Ste. Marie at the Valley Camp Museum, and really is.
And that's in September?
Yeah, it's one of the greatest achievements that you could aspire to in our industry. So growing up with this and or history, I tell everybody at the port, even today, is that we truly can't move forward without reflecting on what got us here. Yeah. And there are takeaways from every aspect of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway system and its history that we can look at today and learn from, where we can embrace certain things and then also advance new opportunities from the learning experiences that we've had. So history is a critical part of my life.
Yeah. And we talked at the very beginning of the show, we talked about the fact that a lot of people didn't even realize that there is a Port of Monroe, right? They had no idea.
It's been around since 1932.
Since 1932, and nobody knew about it.
Its identity for a very long time was lots of potential.
Right.
And that lots of potential spanned decades. And when I became the port director in 2012, there had not been a port director since 1978. And thankfully, due to our Board of Commissioners, the Port Commissioners of the Monroe Port Commission, we operate under the Port District Act of 1925, and we're different than other port authorities in that manner. But our chairman and vice chairman at the time, our chairman was a man named Tom Christen, who he had been the chairman of the Port of Monroe for almost 20 years, and our vice chairman, who is chairman today, Dale Brose, they, with Mayor Clark, saw the need for the Port of Monroe and the opportunity for it to be something greater, and they looked for a port director. And at that time, in Toledo, the opportunity existed in Monroe, and a lot
You
of
were still working on a Schoonmaker at that time, weren't you?
yeah, I'm still working on the Schoonmaker now. Well, what's interesting is that
But it hadn't even opened yet, right?
No, when I took the job
Yeah.
at the Port of Monroe, I was still overseeing the construction of the slip where the Schoonmaker was going to go at the museum. And I was actually the port director of Monroe when I oversaw the move of the ship from her previous location. But again, it's a way in which what we're doing at the Port of Monroe, we try to do for the entire system. And the successes that we can achieve here on what could be considered at a small port, I always say that we're the biggest little port on the Great Lakes, and one day when we grow up, we'll be a real port, which when we were just starting out was kind of funny. But today, we really have made our mark and continue to. And so having those connections that aren't just on the dock at the Port of Monroe, but where we are advocating for the Great Lakes maritime industry, past, present, and future, it's important. It's part of our identity. I say that we are the mariner's port, that we put the men and women aboard the ships and the people on our docks first. I've said many times lately, we are about people before profit and relationships before revenue.
Yeah.
And we focus on the maritime industry. And when you focus on people, everything else falls into place.
Yeah, exactly.
And for us, we don't operate like other port authorities that are really pseudo-economic development agencies and real estate agencies. We focus on being a nonprofit for our community that exists to promote commerce across the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway System by the marine transportation mode across the docks at the Port of Monroe, ultimately generating jobs and tax revenue, which hopefully allows our community to be more prosperous. That is our mission.
Yeah.
And
you know what's, I got to interrupt you because you know what's interesting? I interview guys in the community all the time. Our sponsor, John Allen, over at Allen Chevrolet Cadillac, and all these guys. And it's always the most successful businesses, the most successful businessmen that I talk to, businesswomen that I talk to. It's all about the people first, and then the profits come. They do. I mean, it's just inevitable because you have to do exactly, your mission is exactly what every successful business's mission is that I have seen, and of all the people that I have interviewed on the show, and there have been literally hundreds, and it's always the same thing. When you put people first, everything else falls into place, and that's exactly what you do, right?
it really is.
And let's talk specifics about the port itself, because in 2012, coal, that was it, pretty much.
Coal
right?
to Monroe Power Plant and the flue gas desulfurization units were just coming online to scrub the exhaust gases, which was also limestone.
Right.
We have liquid asphalt cargo, but the Port of Monroe did something very non-traditional with Monroe Power Plant and DTE, and that was we entered into the first partnership of its kind where a public port was managing a byproduct for a public utility. And it was a way to ensure that cargo that was going to a landfill and that was not going across our docks was beneficially reused and recycled and went through the port. So we kicked off our port revival by managing and marketing the synthetic gypsum that is produced as a byproduct of the scrubbing process at the plant. And we were able to do that with our local partner, DRM Terminal Services, a man named Tony Gray, who is the chairman of DRM, and now his son, Stephen Gray, who is the president. Tony, he was an Air Force pilot, so we always have the back and forth discussion of who's better, and we know it's the Navy pilots. So, sorry to any of the Air Force guys out there, but he made the investment in personnel and equipment and brought the workforce into place to allow my vision for the port to become a reality. And I think back to the first cargoes that we were handling in 2012. What's interesting is the very first cargo that I worked on at the Port of Monroe was a load of wind towers made at Venn Tower, right here in Monroe, and they were going to New York. The crazy thing is that those wind towers were moved by the historic Tug Ohio, which is now at the National Museum of the Great Lakes.
That is pretty ironic.
It's pretty wild when things come full circle like that. But the port, cargo-wise, from synthetic gypsum, it has led to also handling bottom ash. And we talk about beneficial reuse. Both gypsum and bottom ash are used in cement mix, in wallboard, and gypsum is also used as a soil amendment in agriculture. We were able to bring value to a product which up to that point had been a liability and reuse it in a way that's beneficial to the community and to the environment. I mentioned
what was happening to all that stuff before?
It was going into a landfill? Contained landfill.
Really?
That's correct. So it really has been a great partnership with DTE, and we continue to look at new opportunities with them. We work with DTE frequently because one thing that it's the port's obligation to do as the public entity, whether we have a financial relationship with a corporation or not, because they are part of our port complex, it's our obligation to try to see them be successful with transportation. And so we have worked with DTE on dredging of the River Raisin, of their dock, of working with the fleets that serve the plant, and we really have the closest relationship between the port and DTE, as well as our other stakeholders that we've ever had, identifying new opportunities and efficiencies which cargo can move through the Port of Monroe, but that it can also benefit their business, which is also generating tax revenue and jobs for the community.
Helps everybody.
Yep.
And so what do you see for the future?
For the future, the most interesting thing is that we are working very diligently to build and open by the middle of 2023 the state of Michigan's first marine container terminal. Now, the container is the most commonly used form of freight movement in the world.
Right.
And yet up to this point, no seaport in Michigan, and very few around the Great Lakes. The only others right now that are handling containers are Cleveland and Duluth. They haven't been handled by the marine mode. And we have...
Now, why is that?
It's a bigger challenge about freight flow being controlled and going through the coast, the number of touches that happen between the coast and the Midwest, and the efficiency that can be realized by bringing it straight here. We've had our challenges to move this forward, which is definitely an understatement, but we've been very blessed to have the support of our federal, state, and local legislators, and with that has come funding towards the Port of Monroe, some already in place, and funding that is forthcoming.
Right. Now, the funding, is that why is that necessary? Is it necessary to you got to it's got to be deeper?
International containers, we have to be compliant with the Safe Port Act of Homeland Security, which essentially is building a U.S. customs facility that can employ scanning technology to ensure that
Sure,
this
that
freight
makes
is
sense.
moving through Monroe safely.
Yeah.
We have a partnership with CBP. We have had advocacy from Senator Peters and Congressman Wahlberg.
Mm-hmm.
And we also were just, thanks to Senator Zorn and Representative Bellino,
Mm-hmm.
included in the state's budget for the first time. Actually, it's the first time that a port was ever included in the state's budget. And that is an appropriation of $5 million towards the port's container terminal.
Wow.
And when we look at funding for that terminal, we have a commitment of funding from the city. We're working with the county. We have an appropriation from the state, and we're also looking to employ federal grant funding that will take it even further. If you go to the Port of Monroe today, and this is something that I've been marveling at just the last couple of weeks, is that the last couple of weeks at the Port of Monroe, on any given day, you had, of course, you have the businesses that are employing people by the hundreds, DTE, Gerdau, Michigan Paving, etc. But at the Port of Monroe, you have had at least a couple hundred of people a day on site working.
Wow.
And when you look at a picture of the port in 2012 where it was overgrown with trees,
Yeah.
and
Compared
today
to
you
today.
look at a dock with a 1,000-footer or a European vessel sitting there, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
And we've tried to do it with honesty, integrity, and humility, and do it in a way that can be a positive story for everyone involved.
Well, Paul, you're doing a phenomenal job, and I could talk to you about this stuff. Seriously, I could talk to you about this stuff all day. I think it's really cool. I think it's great what you've done. I'm really looking forward to the future. I'd love to have you back on again, because I have barely scratched the surface, honestly, about the stuff that I'd like to talk to you about with regard not just to the port, but heck, you have one of the coolest lives, man. You seriously, I mean,
Very blessed.
You really are, and maybe someday, hey, maybe we can get your dad on. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be
I would
very
love
cool
to
as well.
have that on. I'd love to do that. All right. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this edition of This Is Our Town. Once again, I want to thank Paul Lemarre over at the Monroe Port Authority. I want to thank you, the port director, for being on the show. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the citizens of Monroe County who allow the port to prosper on a daily basis.
Well, and thank you, Paul. That is unfortunately all the time we have. We got to kick it on over to my good buddy Bob Vergils as he goes bobbing around Monroe. Until next week, take care, everybody. See ya.
Join us every Sunday at noon and Tuesday at 7 p.m. for another edition of This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevy.
This is our town, the place we call